This is series number 3, Eliminating Barriers to Employment. Barriers. Barriers are a block, chain of events perhaps, clog, deterrent, a drag, encumbrance, handicap, hindrance, or hurdle. Sometimes there are things that cannot be seen or things that all of a sudden happen to us. So when we think in that way, they can become an impediment, an inhibition, interference, obstacle, obstruction, roadblock, a stop, a stumbling block, a fetter, monocle, shackle, constraint, restraint, or cushion. When we think about barriers to employment, we always consider the 2 dimensions of observation. The first dimension is the physical dimension, and secondly is the mental dimension. In the physical, it would be a natural formation or structure that prevents or hinders movement or action. Physical can also be a tangible thing that happens in the natural and always outside of the mind. And the mental is something immaterial, something that we cannot see physically. However, we can observe by behavioral patterns. So mental is something immaterial that impedes or separates. Mental is also that which occurs in the mind, the part of the person that feels, thinks, perceives, will, and the part that especially reasons. First, we will address the mental areas. The mental areas of the mind include the soul. The soul is made up of the mind, the will, and the emotions. Within the mind, will, and the emotions are the 3 areas that most people don't think about when they're thinking about going back to work or going to another career, going to school, or just relaxing or making the transition from retirement back to the employment place. So we have the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious. In the conscious mind, this is where we perceive and see most things with our eyes. Perceiving, apprehending, or noticing with a degree of controlled thought or observation, those things that we see and become aware of, the things that we're able to see and to grasp with our understanding, and then to begin to recognize what these things mean as we see them. In the subconscious, these exist in the mind but not immediately available to the consciousness. For example, of having a subconscious motive, sometimes we do things and don't remember that we've come across this before, and the motive is subconsciously resting in our mind until it's reactivated by an action. So these are mental activities just below the threshold of consciousness. It's a part of the person's mind that has ideas, the feelings, and etc. The person that the person is not aware of. So in the subconscious, a person's behavior can be influenced by urges that exist only in the subconscious. And most of the times these are feelings that are agitated, are brought back by feelings, sayings, movements, actions, certain smells, colors. We don't know what triggers them, but they're triggered, and when they are triggered, we have to remember that we have to stay according to our plan for work or recareering. In the unconscious mind, our first thing is we don't really know what's going on. We're not aware. Something can just go on around us. We're at home every day. We're talking to our friends, but we're not aware. We're free from self-awareness. The other thing is, in the unconscious mind, it's not marked by conscious thought, by a sensation, or by a feeling. It's there, just not brought to the level of consciousness. So also when we're reacting or rehearsing things that have gone on, especially in a career that has ended, we aren't really conscious, or we don't hold or plan any thought that's carried out. So those unconscious things are lying below the subconscious areas, but we don't plan to do anything. We don't plan any specific action. So we have to always be aware of the things that are lying dormant that we don't know or perceive. So our conscious, subconscious, and unconscious areas of the mind are some areas that we have to take time to replay things that have gone on in our minds and in our wills, that we don't replay these same emotions when we get ready to go back to work or we enter the field or to transfer to another area of an occupation. Once we've spent 10 to 20 years on a job and we've retired or we've had to have a break in employment for any reason, the next level is growth. Growth is very good because it allows us to take a look on the outside of what's going on, to relate it to the past, and then to move on into our future. What might inhibit growth is the root of what's going on in your life. So to trace what's holding us back, if we're not able to move past a retirement or a layoff or a company closure, we have to say, what do you feel? And I say, what do you feel, and not how do you feel, because you can feel good and you can feel happy, but once that first initial feeling subsides, it's still something there, and you have to identify what it is. Sometimes it's a feeling of inadequacy or a feeling of loss, and then to identify with what it is, it helps us find out where it happened or when it happened. For instance, if you heard something on the job 3 years ago that led you to this day, you knew that the company was closing, but you just didn't know when. You trace it back to the origin and then begin to write or journal what your beliefs are and then how you're going to overcome this in order to grow and to move on to your next level of life. So sometimes you can get stuck and you can believe that good things aren't for you, or that you have less than what it takes to achieve your goal. Someone might tell you because of your age, you can't have a new dream. You may as well just retire and go home. And then someone may also tell you that it's too late for you or you're too old to do anything. So whatever it is you believe, these will also define where your actions will be. Based upon what you're believing, we want to go to the ABCs of the mental barriers. So we won't go through all of them, just a few of them. Sometimes fear from rejection, fear from a company closure, fear from what someone has said will hold you back from growing or continuing on to your next level of life. Anxiety and apprehension are very, very real partners of fear, because they allow your brain to go into different areas of your life that really shouldn't be, because when you get anxious about the things that you haven't seen or learned or heard, then that could create a deeper level of fear. It could hold you back. Being apprehensive or being very cautious could cause you not to go back. Also, with fear and anxiety become insomnia. You can spend nights laying awake in bed and not knowing where you're going to get your next money from, how you're going to make it. You have children now, your grandchildren have returned home, or now that your job has ended and you have to wait 3 to 6 months before you can get your Social Security, or your retirement is not going to kick in for at least another 3 to 5 years. So with the fear and the anxiety and the insomnia, then all the negative thoughts are going to play into that. So you have to think about what you're going to do to overcome these things. And it's also always very good to seek counseling. Always go to someone that you can trust. If you don't know anyone to trust, there are free places at some of the state hospitals that offer free counseling for bereavement. And bereavement, I say, because it's a loss. And anytime you've worked on your job for 15 or 20 years, it is loss. It's loss of relationships from work. It's loss of ideas, loss of happiness, loss of everything that was related to you gaining the income that you're now losing. Now we're going to attack the physical challenges. So first we're mental, where we were able to go over, of course you have to get pen and paper, spend some time at the beach or at the library, someplace where you can be alone, and then write out all the things that are on the surface in order to get to the root. So these are the mental areas, our conscious and subconscious areas. So with the physical challenges, these are more, they're seen, and you can make a plan that's easier to attack better than something that you could do with the mental barriers. So in the physical challenges, when you're young, you don't think about them when you're 18 years old or 25 years old. You have the whole world at your fingertips, and then all of a sudden you've worked 25 years for a company, the company closed, and your world begins to unravel. So then you have to deal with age, older children, substance abuse sometimes in children, many things, losing a home in addition to a job. So these physical challenges, we can make a plan, of course, with careful counseling to overcome these. Barriers to employment of the aging workforce. So some of our physical barriers include the elements of the economy that create a difficult job market. For most seniors who want to enter the job market, or who've been retired and want to go back part-time, the elements of the economy are the elements that have resulted in a decrease or lack of funding or capital that can keep a company from closing the doors. A lot of times, if a company doesn't close, they will move in another area of the country, which causes a person who works in one area to have to drive a great distance or to relocate when it's not feasibly possible, or if the company shuts down because of the lack of capital and then that person's without money. It's difficult because now you have to reconsider all of the things that you've done over the past 5 years that you didn't plan, or you didn't think that you'd ever get laid off, or you thought that you would be at retirement age. So those elements would be the lack of planning faced with the lack of capital and a closing workforce or a closing agency. So sometimes when an agency decides to decrease staff if they don't close, if you didn't plan 5 years ago to go back to school to increase your skills, then that could cause you to be without a job, but then your coworker can keep their job because they decided to go back to school to get the degree or the technical skills that were required to stay with the company. The other thing that's really harsh in the workplace for seniors, or for those who are 45, not just 55, but 45 and up, are age discrimination issues. Sometimes employers don't want to pay the amount of money that's going to be required for the medical plans, and when a person becomes 45 to 55, they force them to retire, and it is age discrimination. And I wouldn't tell anyone to go and sue the employer because, of course, you have to prove that. So within the age discrimination, if an employer sees a person who's leaning all the time or they're sitting all the time, they're going to think that they have some health problems that weren't readily known, and that could be a great hindrance to work because the employer will lay them off or give them an early retirement. So when it comes to our age, we have to remember that health and diet and exercise play such a great role in maintaining our daily work functions. So we have to get up early in the morning, eat properly to avoid any health problems. Sometimes with repetitive motions at work, they cause disabilities, and the employers aren't willing to pay for those disabilities if you have to continue to go to the doctor or to take sick time off. So they become just physical limitations. We don't want that to go into your next career if you decide not to work at home. If you're working at home or you decide to become an entrepreneur, then the health problem